Jim Clarke here at the Synchronicity Sanctuary in Central Virginia to share another contemplative focus with you. And the focus that we're going to explore today is to believe you are less than divine is to live defending who you are not. All our suffering stems from a firm belief that we are less than the gods we create out of ignorance and blind belief. When the mind rules, we live in bondage to illusion. And that's the contemplative focus that we're going to look at today. Um, it's one that I found particularly powerful in my journey here. And in one way or another, it still plays out even to this day to bring me higher and higher into the truth of who I am. And hopefully, you will be able to use something like this for your own spiritual evolution. So, we're born, we get an ego, we go through the enculturation process, we take on certain beliefs, whatever they might be, but the one constant theme that seems to be universal is that we are human, and then there is the Creator who is something or someone greater than anything that we know in our world, something that made us or someone that made us. So this habitual kind of a perception, which stems way, way back in human history, it still persists with us today. And yet more and more people are waking up to the truth that the divine is not separate from themselves. The divine is, there is no separation. The creator is not different than the creation. It's one and the same. So the real point in being a human being and having this experience is to initially come into a experience where you have no definition of who you are. It's kind of like all of a sudden you wake up and you don't even know who you are, and you don't know what's going on. All you can think of is trying to survive, and that survival instinct kicks in right away, and we're of course attached to our mother and our family and so forth, because that's the group of people that we initially come into to know and associate with our very survival. So that kind of a theme plays out in life all through our life, unless, of course, we start to question life. If we start to question some of the identities that we have taken on. And sometimes this can happen spontaneously through some kind of an awakening that's triggered by something around you or some person around you. And sometimes we simply keep questioning stuff because we're not quite satisfied with what our mind is telling us. It doesn't seem to render any kind of a fulfillment. And so the question still persists. As Socrates emphasized in his teaching, to know yourself. And the only way he taught his students to do that was to constantly question everything, especially about yourself. Not with judgment, not with some goal in mind, simply to see if what you were thinking was absolutely true. So we go through life struggling to survive. That's our primary focus until we reach, maybe middle age or so forth, depending on how successful we are. And then we have our identities that we have accumulated during this process. And if we have any experience at all that tells us that there's more to life than meets the eye, then we go into another process. This is kind of like where you have journeyed this kind of a journey often enough and you're complete with it. You've kind of had enough of the human experience. You've had enough of trying to be who you are not, and now you're really pushing yourself to explore who you really are. What is there beyond my thinking that I can experience that's more permanent, more spiritual, more fulfilling? So, because all through life, what are we really looking for? We're looking to survive, sure, but we're also looking for some form of fulfillment. And usually we reach for things that are not fulfilling because that's all we know and it's all that seems to be accessible to us. But when we start to meditate, when something triggers us and pushes us into that kind of a practice, because we're looking, not because we know, but because we're trying to know, then doors open up and we start to get hints, we start to get visions, and we start to get phenomenal kind of experiences in dreams and in thoughts and in feelings and so forth that bring us to an elevated state for a moment or two. But that elevated state is a taste of exactly what we've been looking for. And once you get a taste of that, then you know you're on the right track, but you may not know the ins and outs and the particulars of how to continue that search to a complete success. So, in my experience, I went through all of this early in life, and well, not real early in life. It was in my 30s before I had any form of awakening, even though I had hints that I was more than what I thought I was many times in my life. I really didn't understand what that was because I didn't have the experience to go by, and it's the experience that tells you something. That's the real education. It's not the thinking mind. The thinking mind can never know the truth of who you are because it's not its function. It's not what it's here for. It's here to serve us if we are become aware enough so that we don't listen to the mind as if it has some kind of an authority over us. So I went through life like that until my 30s, and then I had an awakening experience. And from that moment on, everything went upside down in my life because I found what I wanted, but there was nothing I could share with anybody because that kind of knowledge is experiential. It's a direct experience of the truth of who you are. Even if it's momentary, the effects do not go away. And there you are. You're on a journey, but you don't know the roadmap. You don't know where to go. You don't know quite what to do. And so you start looking for that. And I did that for years. I explored through books because there was no internet back in that day. And then I explored by trying out different meditation systems that I found here and there, and through books, of course, and through writing letters, which was a slow process. But I did meditate. Even though it was traditional meditation, I would do things that were very traditional and would create a truthful focus, which was difficult to maintain for a very long time in that day because my mind was still very, very busy and still preoccupied with trying to maintain its status within my experience. So I would do mantras, I would look at candlelight, I would do all kinds of things like that that would represent something divine to me so that I could associate myself with that. And that's really kind of the whole system. In meditation, we are training the mind to break its habit of constant thinking, undirected thinking, no focused thinking. I mean, you experience this even when you go to school and you're starting to learn how to become proficient in something. It requires a focus, and that's always a challenge for people to hold your attention onto a singular subject for any length of time. You start to realize just how your mind wants to keep wandering. It doesn't want to go there for very long, because when it does, its existence, as it has been with you prior to this kind of a search, is endangered. It's not going to have that kind of authority. It's not going to be able to maintain the beliefs and the status quo that it has known up to that point. And so there's resistance there. But with persistence and with relaxation, it comes from meditation, but just persistence and a daily meditative practice, eventually the mind slows down And as the mind slows down, your ability to communicate with other aspects, intelligent aspects of yourself, opens up. And that's where you start to get insights, intuitive insights into what life is and who you are. And it's a great process because it unfolds like a mystery. It opens you up to the mystery that life really is, the mystery that you first experienced early in birth and then forgot because you were taking on so much data about who you were and what you had to do to survive. And so all that mystery, the awe of life itself, kind of was pushed into the background. And by the time you're, say, in your 20s and you're working, you're kind of independent, that's who you are as far as you know. And the mystery of life is gone, and the drudgery of life is present. So, and this is the suffering of life on earth. People are not dancing in the street just because they're alive unless they're in love. And when you're in love, everything is okay. So, how can you get into a state of love and remain in that state? The only way that I have ever found is to discover who you are, to anchor yourself in who you are, and to grow that awareness of who you truly are. We are divine. We are the divinity. We are the one source consciousness that is all and everything. And to get rid of any data, any beliefs that get in the way of the experience of that is the purpose and the process of meditation and a holistic lifestyle that supports the meditative practice, the daily practice of meditation, the daily persistent focus on who you truly are, and to create your body in such a way with a healthy diet and some exercise so that it can sustain the process. It's a very energetic process, and your emotions must be brought into some balance where they're more positive than negative, which is the opposite of what we experience by default. And same with the thoughts. Your thoughts have to become more and more positive to keep sustaining that focus, because what we focus on, we become. And if you can't focus on something truthful, something elevating, something that enhances your life and brings you closer to your own truth, then you're going to get the opposite. You're going to get something that pulls you down, that contracts you, that stops you from enjoying the life that you're here to live. And this is what I've experienced here at the Synchronicity Sanctuary for many, many years, going through a daily routine of exercise, good diet, daily meditation, and daily contemplations such as this that I was given by my teacher that triggers various processes within the mind. It's giving the mind something, a truthful focus to work with, rather than spontaneous random thinking that goes nowhere all the time. So this is really a kind of a way to live so that you can get to the truth of who you are. And once you establish that, the more you get into that, the more that you experience that, the more you know that you're on the right path. It's working for you. And eventually, it just becomes your constant. It's a new constant. And that constant is a very elevated and joyous experience. It's the experience of being the love that you are. This is the essence of the truth of who you are is love. It's inclusive. It's non-judgmental. It's always celebratory, and it's very, very creative. So to live in that way, to experience life that way, is to experience the truth of who you are while you're still being a human being. The human being aspect, the ego aspect of our experience is here to allow us to have that experience. It doesn't really get in the way. It just is how we begin. And hopefully, if we adopt a meditative lifestyle and move ourselves in that direction, become more and more truthful, then we will end up experiencing ourselves for the consciousness that we are before we leave these bodies. And when we do, we have used this experience of being human to its ultimate fulfillment. And that's what I wanted to share with you this morning. A contemplation is a direction, it's a focus, and if you practice using such tools as this while you're about your day, when you're not in sitting meditation, for example, or even if you are a sitting meditation, if you have a contemplative focus like this, it just helps to pull the mind into that focus and keep it where it's going to help you to have the experience that you're trying to get. So this is me again, signing off for this fine Monday morning here at the Synchronicity Sanctuary. I'll be back again next Monday morning to share another contemplative focus with you.